of our invasion of Iraq have made us less safe and has given rise to an incredible expansion of anti-Americanism.
Yes. The point is very well made by Wes Clark, another candidate, who in his book says that, you know, our military doctrine is to project overwhelming power.
That's what we do well.
That's what we do well, and that's what gives us that dominant position. We are not trained or prepared to act as occupying forces. And getting bogged down in Iraq as occupiers has really weakened us militarily. So even in terms of the Bush administration's own objectives of projecting overwhelming power, we are worse off having got bogged down in Iraq as an occupying force. We can project less threat or power to the neighboring countries.
We're less able to deal with other threats because we're bogged down in Iraq.
Yeah, we will not spend $160 billion and put our troops in danger again to get rid of another Saddam.
All right. Staying with this argument of whether America is better off because of the attack against Iraq, the capture of Saddam Hussein, the fact that people in Iraq no longer have to fear Saddam. Here's part of a conversation with Richard Pearl recently on this program. Roll tape. Democracy. Helping people create a democracy. Have we learned any lessons about that?
Well, it's hard.
It's much harder than we imagined.
No, I don't think anyone imagined that it would be easy to fashion a democracy. You had to begin by removing the obstacle to democracy, Saddam Hussein.
And then you had to capture him.
And then we had to capture him, and happily we've now done that. And there is a sense among Iraqis, at last, that they don't have to fear his return. And we are now putting to the test the capacity of people who have been dominated by a brutal tyrant to organize themselves along democratic lines. I'm rather optimistic that they will succeed in doing that. It's certainly worth trying, Charlie, because democracies don't make wars. Wars are started by dictators who need wars to keep themselves in power, who need enemies to keep themselves in power. Internal enemies, external enemies.
So the argument Mr. Pearl is making is that, rightly or wrongly, there's no Saddam, and there's an opportunity to create democracies, and that's better, whether we are occupiers or liberators or regardless.
This is what I really passionately disagree with, because I have actually been in the business of trying to foster open societies. Right. So I know something about it.
Well, tell us how you've been in the business of trying to do it.
Well, I've set up a network of foundations to promote open societies, and it's functions now in some 30-odd countries. We moved in to help the transition from the closed societies of the Soviet system to the open societies of democracy. So in the countries like Hungary, my native Hungary, in Russia, in Central Asia, I've got foundations which are run by people in the country who believe in the ideas of an open society. And they decide what they need to spend money on and what kind of actions are needed. And I think that the foundations have made some contribution to promotion of a democracy.
Okay, from that experience, why is it that what Pearl said about hoping to create a democracy in Iraq is so bad?
Because it has to be the people themselves who take you there. Let's say when in Croatia, people turned against Tudjman, you then got rid of a dictator. Yeah. But in Yugoslavia, when people turned against...
But are you saying to the people of Iraq who are free today, you would have been better off if you lived longer under Saddam until you were prepared to overthrow him yourself and create democracy. It was none of our business to try to overthrow him on your behalf, because you, A, may not have wanted us to do it, but it was none of our business, and it was up to you to do it, and if you couldn't do it, then you had to live under his boot.
I think we were very right to put a lot of pressure on Saddam.
Well, he was under sanctions already, so
sanctions didn't work that well, because actually they strengthened the regime.
They strengthen most dictatorships, don't they?
Because it leads to smuggling, and who can smuggle?
Yeah.
The one who has access to the local authorities. But anyhow, let's talk now about the after September 11, when there was a desire to impose to get rid of weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, and because America was determined, the UN actually functioned extremely well in passing a very strong resolution. And you had the inspectors there, and they found that the missiles exceeded the range by 20 kilometers, and Saddam had started destroying his missiles.
Right. So your argument is that the UN inspection, Hans Blix and his colleagues were doing a pretty good job. All they needed was more time.
And they were actually effective. There was no way in which Saddam could have used his weapons, even if he had them. And I think that had we given it time, and it would have worked. And I think that the people of Iraq would have actually overturned Saddam, because they were. I believe that. I believe that because...
Why do you believe that? What
I tell you why.
Empirical evidence is there that suggests they would have had that power?
No, I tell you why. You have to ask yourself, why didn't Saddam come clean? And
no one knows the answer to that. What's your...
Well, the reason was that he couldn't afford not to have these weapons, because he was intimidating his people. People were afraid of him because he had this overwhelming power. But...
So you're saying that Saddam had to use the fear that he had nuclear weapons, that was the reason that he was able to intimidate his own people, not countries outside his own borders.
That's right. That's right. And when he released his prisoners from prison, I thought that was also a sign that he was somehow weakening. Although he may have been preparing for exactly the chaos that occurred after the capture of... that would give him more credit that I'm willing to do. At any rate, I think that Saddam ruled by imposing fear. And I think that the gentleman you showed Richard Pearl, has some similarity in wanting to impose fear on the rest of the world.
Now, what is the fear do you think Richard Pearl wants to impose?
That we can come and use preemptive action. That you rule, you dictators, you rule, at our mercy.
Right. He clearly wants that, because they believe, the administration, Pearl makes no bones about that, and part of the argument for preemptive action in some cases is national security. The other argument is that people who harbor terrorists ought to be fearful of the fact that the United States might come. They believe that's a good thing. They believe that terrorists are encouraged because of Somalia and other incidences in America. That's what they believe. And they have.
And I think this is a reasonable position, actually, because you do have to deal with terrorists one way or another, and your ability to deal with them is very useful.
Hence, you make the argument to attack Afghanistan after Al-Qaeda attacked us, because otherwise they would be encouraged to do it again and again and again and again.
That's right. However, in order to deal with terrorism, you have to locate them. And this requires investigation. It requires police work. You can only drop a bomb when you know where the bomb has to be dropped. And in order to do that, you need information. And in order to get information, you will not get it purely by imposing fear. You must also have the people sympathize with you. They must be they mustn't sympathize with the terrorists. And this is where we have gone wrong, because